No, did you want, I wasn't going to hand them out. Did you want to? That's what I thought.
Good morning, St. John Lutheran Church. Good. It is. Is that better? Okay. So, Steve, you got to aim right at it. Okay. Good morning and welcome to our feedback meeting, where our council president Steve Delaney is going to share some of the results of the feedback that the congregation leadership has sought out in the last few weeks. Before we do that, today was kind of odd in worship. Usually when the pastor is a knucklehead, and see, I'm talking Charles Barkley because I got basketball on my mind, right? When the pastor forgets to do the birthdays, somebody usually shouts it out at me. Y'all were slacking. No. So we're going to say a word of prayer for those who are in the congregation who are celebrating in the days ahead. Let's pray. Good and gracious God, we give you thanks that you have clothed us with the love and the life of Jesus Christ. We especially thank you today for our family in Christ who are celebrating birthdays. Michael and Rebecca, Scott, Marge, Gabby, Dan, and Lilia. As they celebrate, Lord, continue to reveal to them the abundance of your love. Shower them with your good gifts that their lives may be a blessing to your creation. We pray, too, for Steve and Deb as they celebrate an anniversary. Continue to strengthen and support them in their marriage. Fill their hearts and their home with love, and grant that they would see in one another the life-giving love that you have poured out for us in Jesus. It's in his precious and beautiful name we pray. Amen. With that, I am going to turn things over to Steve. One note for those who are participating in the live stream, if you have any comments that you would like to share with Steve during the meeting, you can text those to me. The number is 920-288-2219. Steve, the floor is yours.
Hello. Nice to see everyone. Thanks for sticking around. I know it's a little snowy out there. It's kind of funny when we talked at the council meeting this week about the reading, about the wedding and the guy showing up wearing the inappropriate clothes. And I always laugh just like when I get up in front of you, because obviously I've gone to the Senator John Fetterman School of hoodies and sweats, but thanks for not kicking me out. So what I'm thinking here today, we're not gonna, I guess I don't want this to be like hey, we got to make decisions today for the life of the church and like we're going to be here for hours. That really isn't the intention. What we really want to do is just let you know what the results of the survey are, what people said. I'm just going to kind of read through. So it doesn't mean because these are the results of the survey that we're going to be able to do everything. It's interesting because there were things that we didn't think of that popped up, and it's like, oh yeah, that's a good thing, and we could probably do that, you know, like kind of like low-hanging fruit. We could pick that one easy, get it off the table, and it's a good thing, and it wouldn't cost us very much money. So there's a few of those that popped up as well. So kind of, I guess what I want to do is we'll just go through the list with the answers to the questions. I'll let you know what people responded and give you an idea. The way I marked it is I grouped stuff together and then kind of tallied how many people said, like, so we have there are a lot of responses that were the same. So I also marked it by which ones are the most common responses and things like that, okay? So I'm just gonna go through that yes, Jess?
Can you share mid-20s, is that the number of responses you got?
We had 26 or 27 responses total. Some of those were couples, husband and wives, that responded, so they may be doubles in the same household, but it's also cool to see that a lot of those were not necessarily the same thing. So two people in the same household came up with different ideas, so that's a good thing too. So I guess when we're going through, if anybody, what I'll probably do is at each one, stop, just see if anybody has any questions. We've got, I don't know, a lot of these are pretty simple and straightforward where there wouldn't be a lot of question. But also if anybody has any comments or if something, because some of it I actually put actual verbiage in. So if you hear something that you think, oh yeah, I wrote that, and then while I'm talking you go, that's not what I meant, feel free to stop me and clear that up too, okay? So the first question is, what are one or two improvements to the physical grounds that you would like to see? The number, now I feel like Steve Harvey. I want to go to the board and point at stuff. That's what I should have done. We should have done this. So what do you think number one was? Anybody got a guess? Okay, I will tell you. Number one was lighten the worship space and narthex and gathering space. More/better/new lighting, lighten up the wood and brick and carpeting and chairs. That was, so out of the 20 some that we had 11 people comment that our worship space is too dark. So, and that's not surprising, because it is kind of dark. And it's funny because after we started getting these, like even today at communion, I'm looking up and I'm like, I never noticed that there was that like thing over the skylight before. So I don't know. So now I'm looking around going, all right, more lights, where do we put them? Okay. So just so you know, that was the number one thing. In the past, this has been brought up. I know at one time we had some suggestions about could we get windows in on this side. There's some structural things with the building that makes that pretty difficult, but just so you know, that's the number one. And obviously we will be looking at that as a council, okay? Number two, coming in with about 6 responses, was doing something to the outdoor space. Cleaning up and making the garden more useful, which we are in the process of that. For those of you who have forgotten or maybe didn't know, when Dick Baumgarten passed away, he left a sizable chunk of money to be used on the garden because he and Hope were such big gardeners at their house. So we do have money with that, and that is something we're going to be starting the garden project when the snow melts, if that ever happens. So that's what we're looking at. So garden is one. Make the front of the church more inviting with flowers. Make better use of the field space behind the church, like add a fire pit, a community garden, a camp out area, have a well-groomed playground area. So that was kind of the piece about our outdoor space. Number 3 on the list was update the original bathrooms, meaning the ones out here in the hallway, so that we've got, specifically in the handicap stall, but maybe in all the stalls, the higher toilets, because obviously those are easier for some people to use, and again, improve the handicap space. In general, those bathrooms pretty much need to be redone. I mean, it was kind of funny that while we were talking about it at council, there's a few of us that always say, oh yeah, we always go over to the Ed Wing to go to the bathroom. We don't even use the ones in the hallway because it's like, those are nicer over there. So that is something that'll be looked at too. Next one on the list was repairs and upgrades to the kitchen. Freshen up the hallways, the flooring, and more decoration and interesting stuff on the walls. That was another one that came in. Replace the front and side doors. That's specifically the original doors from the original building here at the church, so going out to the carport, and that first one out in the narthex. Those are the two that they're talking about, which actually would be a really good thing because just from an energy standpoint, I know especially this one, on a really windy, snowy day, the snow blows in under the door. So obviously that can't be good for efficiency. So
And varmints.
yeah, and varmints, yeah. And so that's it. When all the varmints in Ashwaubenon are moving in because we've got space, that might not be the outreach we're looking for. I don't know. I didn't see that on the list of what we can do. Online worship, we had a few people say they were interested in better audio and just doing something to improve the experience. Then we get down, the rest of these are one-offs that just one person had suggested. Actually doing cooling for the narthex and the gathering space. But we do have air conditioning in here, right? Where's the...
Not in the fellowship hall, not in the education.
Okay, but this part, we do have air, right? Okay. Somebody suggested solar panels, if that would be worth it to offset energy bills. Doing some sort of keyless entry. As we'll see we'll talk about in a couple minutes when we get to like the, what dream do you have about our mission? One of the things that pops up there is, well, how can we bring outside groups in? We have all that great space in the education wing. So who might have a need? You know, we've got another scout troop in. We're looking at, things like blood drives, having AA meetings here, whatever the community might have a need for, if we can provide the space. The nice thing with the keyless is that if we have meetings in the education wing, we can give people access to that part to use the classroom space, and we can lock up the rest of the church. Not that we're not trusting, but just a good idea. And we already have somebody from the new scout troop that we sponsor here at the church, who that is their business, as keyless entry systems. So they're already willing to, we don't have any pricing, we don't know anything else yet, but they're already willing to work with us to basically just give us a system at cost, set it up. They won't charge us any of the labor fees, anything like that. So we already kind of are looking at something like that. Pub tables in the gathering space out there. That was a suggestion I know from somebody that likes to have a place to put coffee down. And so if we're all standing around, it'd be nice to lean on something, have some place to put coffee. And then implement a system for anyone who has any hearing impairments. I know we've got, just in my family even, I know we've got people that have some difficulty hearing. And so we're looking at, that was something else that we talked about. Maybe a Bluetooth system or something like that. So that was everything that came across in the improvements to the physical space. Does anybody have any questions, or while we're talking, if you didn't get an opportunity to fill out the survey, did something just pop in your head that you want to add? Anything else?
Steve?
Yeah.
Jessica and I were talking Friday on lighting up the church. It just came to me, it wouldn't be inconceivable to put in skylights. And those really add a lot of light. You know, if you put a couple
That's a good idea. And you're talking like those, I didn't even think of that, not like the big massive one, but the
Right.
tube lights, the
They're-
ones.
They can be round, circular, like
Mhm.
a foot or 15 inches in diameter. They can be square, but they let a tremendous amount of light in. I think it was
They have mirrors in them, so they refract or reflect.
Okay,
So they gather it.
that's,
It's just
that's a
not
good
like
idea.
light, whatever shines in it. It's
Yeah.
got coating.
And that's funny because I didn't think of that, but that was a huge thing in,
I was thinking it was just, can we paint, can we stain? And yeah, that is, it would be a big job to that ceiling, but I think skylights might make a big, big difference.
okay.
I was just gonna say, there's some spectacular, historic, architectural, and lovingly created aspects to this sanctuary. And I think that before we rush into, I agree, lighting things up is a great idea, but before we rush into and like paint or drilling, holes and things that we can't ever recover from, once you make those changes, once you paint this beautiful wood, you don't ever go back from that really. Maybe it would be a good idea to have a true professional invest a little bit in a designer who really knows what he or she is doing to give us some professional advice on it. So we don't lose anything historic, but we really move forward with creating an effective.
And that is a really good point. We actually talked about that on the council because there were some things, because I don't know, this is kind of a weird way to say it, but depending on how long you've been attending church here or how, there's certain things, like I am seriously tied to the rosette. Like this thing back here,
Yes, yes.
it's my favorite thing about the church. And I remember when it was built, when we were looking at bringing in the shadow boxes and stuff. And I love the shadow boxes, especially, that with the age of the congregation, that history is so important. I think it's important. I hope everybody else realizes that too. But that was one of the things we talked about too, is this isn't just gonna be like we need to light the sanctuary, let's paint everything white or something like that. We would like to have architects come in, and that would be the same, looking at how do we reset the bathroom space. If we really are gonna do some work on the kitchen, is it possible that we take some space from the kitchen to expand the bathrooms to make some more room there? There's a lot of that is above most of our knowledge levels, and so we appreciate the comment, and that is something that we definitely would do, because we have a lot of respect for the space, and so we want to be able to honor the space, but also if we can do some things that are not invasive and doesn't change a lot, but we can lighten it up, that would work too. So, Jess?
And these boxes, with the stained glass, that was because we couldn't do windows. So that was our version of doing windows, to try to bring some light to a dull or darker, natural wall. So imagine that sunlight shining through. So that's why we did those.
Anybody have anything else? Yes?
If we really wanted to do solar panels, there's an ELCA church in Appleton that I went and looked at as they did the brand reveal of it. So that's something that we're interested in doing. There is a church who's successfully done it.
Do you know which one?
I can't remember at this time, but
Okay.
I know I went there to be part of it on behalf of the council. So I can get you all that information too, but that's something that we want to do. It's really successful and it produces quite a bit of energy, even on cloudy days, so.
Okay, good to know.
I'm taking notes too, Stephen.
Okay, thanks. Then I will not, after I write this one thing down.
So have you gone through then all of what people have read?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
So then I'll stand up, because apparently I was the only one. So, and this is nothing about church. I thought it was fun, which we did for many times. One time, usually in June, we go outside.
We're getting.
Oh, we're getting to the outside one.
That's why I asked you
Oh, no. That was, sorry. I thought you meant was, no. Yeah, thanks for coming. No mission changes here. No, sorry, Dale. Yep.
I'm just checking.
Okay, that's just changes or updates or whatever to the physical space, because that was question 1. So if everybody's good with that, we'll go on then to a dream or two that you have for the direction of our ministry and our mission. So number 1 on that list was, I tied it in under a blanket of social justice. We had quite a few comments, like as Josh was talking about becoming a reconciling in Christ church. We had quite a few comments about that. That was the number 1 of the social issues that came across. Just for reference, there are only out of our synod, out of the ECSW synod, we have 2 churches in the entire synod that are RIC churches. One is Trinity here in Green Bay, and the other one is First English in Appleton. So it is not, I don't want to say it's not hard, because it takes some examination, because it is something that as a church, there's some training involved, and the training isn't just you sit and listen. It actually is like walking through and asking questions to the congregation and saying, hey, have you thought about this? Or did you know this? Or things like that. So it's not hard, but there is a process to do it. And it is, one of the things that we talked about is being welcoming. Josh talked about it in the sermon today, but being welcoming. Okay, well, it's easy to say that. I mean, we're a church. Everybody can come in. Just about every church on the planet, at least every Christian church, is saying, yeah, come on in, we're welcoming. But the one thing that is interesting is how many people are really intentional about offering that welcome. And that's one of the things that we were talking about, is being truly intentional for whatever that looks like. And I don't want to spend like a ton of time on the RIC stuff, because I don't want to get bogged down there, but just so you know, just to give you a little background, this Reconciling Works came out of, I believe, the ELCA is where it started. It started in Lutheranism. And I believe, I don't know if it was before or after the decisions with the church body. Was it before? Okay, that's what I thought. Before the decisions to allow LGBTQ marriages in the church and clergy. So what this program did, it started out as specifically an LGBTQ program to identify that, yes, that group of people you would definitely welcome in your church. As it's grown over the years, it's actually turned into, Jessica had a really good welcome statement from a brand new church that just got their designation in New Jersey. And it basically, what they've changed to is it still has that element of LGBTQ, and that is a focus for them. But they also talk about people who are differently abled, people, basically any community that has ever been considered in the margins, whether it's women or it's based on race or whatever. Immigration status, yeah, things like anything like that you can think of. That's what this addresses. So it's a cool designation, because it basically is you screaming to the world, like, every single person on this planet can come to this church, and we're going to be happy to throw them a cup of coffee, feed them, teach them, worship with them. So I'm a big fan of this one. But moving on from that, some of the other things that, besides specifically becoming an RIC church, the comments were continue the work with racial equity, more community involvement. Specifically, church isn't just what happens in the building and on Sundays. Somebody brought up possibility of having vouchers for gas, hotels, or meals for people who maybe are in short-term need if they're passing through and they run out of money in Green Bay and they need a little assistance to help them along their way. Also, because overwhelmingly the congregation at St. John wants to do stuff, but it's kind of like everybody's we're willing to do stuff, we want to do stuff, but we don't know what to do. So one of the other things I thought was a good idea that came across was reaching out to church members as a whole, just to see if anybody has any charities or organizations that you work with now. Maybe, it's something that's lesser known or whatever, and to see if you come up with something and say, hey, I'm doing this work with this group, and maybe we look at doing a church-wide event, and we go out and do something as a group instead of, and expand the presence. And also somebody suggested doing monthly service projects in the community, which that kind of all ties in together. So ideally, that is something we're looking at, is we really want to see what we can do and see what we can develop to go out and do some stuff. And not just the youth and I shouldn't say that. It's breaking out by groups, having a men's group, a women's group, having book club do something, having the youth do something, that's all great, but not just that. I mean, we could also hey, here's a church-wide event that anybody can do, no matter if you're 2 years old or 200 years old. We've got space and we've got something for you to do. So that's kind of the encompass of all the social justice stuff. And we had 11 of those too, so that was definitely the number one. The next one was specific to our types of worship. Had a lot of folks that were asking about doing outside worship again, making sure we can get back outside. Maybe some contemporary style worship, jazz worship, R&B worship, possibly having 2 services a week with different types of services. And somebody also put, not always the boring traditional worship. So, did you put that?
I try and keep people on their toes. I mean, today I even forgot the birthday stuff.
Exactly. Well, we saw all the food out there, and we're like, yeah, keep it rolling, keep it rolling. So definitely that is something that we would look at. And just so you know, too, kind of tie in with some of the things we're looking at for the garden. We're looking at how can we have the garden space be more usable, like if maybe it turns into something that has some patio space or something. So maybe when the weather gets nice, after church, we head out to the garden, and that's where we have the coffee and the treats or something like that. So we want to be able to we have great space outside, and we want to be able to try and use that space. We want the community to use the space. I mean, this really is a really good facility. Size-wise, it might be a little bigger than we need right now, but I look at, my office is in an old parsonage connected to Zion Lutheran in downtown Appleton. And I mean, that church is ginormous. It's got a ginormous school attached to it. It's got a bowling alley. It's got all this stuff, which is a financial anchor for the congregation right now because it's way too big. And so even though we're a little big, this is a pretty right-sized place, I think, right now, if we're able to do some of this community stuff. Next one on the list, which tied for number 2, was focus on various groups for activities. A lot of the suggestions were getting the adult Bible study going again. Somebody brought up intergenerational learning, that the comment was younger kids with seniors and everybody in between, just because there's a lot of interesting conversation when you've got, some unfiltered people in the group, kids are unfiltered. And from my parents' standpoint, so are seniors sometimes. So, and I really hope they're not watching right now. But that was on there too. So intergenerational learning, high school youth group, middle school youth group, couples group, maybe doing some game nights in the winter, or really any time of year. Forums, I like this one too, forums that address everyday topics in a safe place. So things, some of the topics that were brought up were like LGBTQ issues, abortion, incarceration rates, things tied to race, like all different things that might be an uncomfortable subject, but in the safe space of our congregation, it would be a good place to hold some of those discussions. Also, look at hosting events in other places besides our church. So maybe we do worship at the community center or in a park, or if we are able to maybe partner with another church and do some sort of study series at a hotel conference room or something like that. So, and then learning / helping / fun gatherings outside of the church building. So I see this makes me happy because one, it's always fun to shake it up. I mean, it was kind of nice, you know, when we were out in the parking lot and when we got to the point we could get the chairs out and we would sit out there. But I also like the willingness of the congregation to go out in the community and do stuff. So it ties in to even the social stuff, the social justice stuff. There's a lot of, we don't have to just stay here. Like, let's go do something somewhere. So that seems to be a big theme on where the mission's going. Next one on the list is grow the membership, new members, outreach. Again, my word is intentional when we think about this, that, you know, we have, one of the things that Josh shared is we've had some families from Incarnation join us who, since Incarnation has closed down recently, and there have been comments about just how generally they feel welcome here, how people have talked to them, and not just Josh, but just, you know, all of us, random folks in the congregation, taking the opportunity to speak with people and say thanks for coming, things like that, and that goes a long way. But it's, you know, we've talked about it also, and it's like we can't just sit here and go, well, let's hope some more people come this week, without doing something to try and get them here. So that goes back to the intentionality of welcoming new members. We had a few people suggest that we try and do more to get back members that are no longer attending. So we have tried things to reach out to members who were here pre-pandemic and now we're not seeing as much. Or maybe not seeing it all. We have some people that we know that have moved. We know of some families that have moved out of the area, so they're no longer on the rolls. We know there's some other families that have chosen different churches. Some of that was related to, they thought we were a little too strict on our COVID policies. Some of it was. So they found other church homes, and while it was sad to see them go, I mean, if that works best for them, we wish them well. But so we've talked about that a little bit, but we're kind of stuck on what more can we do. And the bottom line, Shelley and Josh had kind of shared with us that families that were coming more regularly pre-pandemic that we straight up have not seen once. So we have some families we don't see very often, but they'll still come occasionally. But the families that not once have come back since the pandemic, it's about 6 families. So And we have reached out repeatedly. And we have reached out repeatedly. So there are some families that don't come as often as they used to before. That, I mean, I think that would probably be a better focus for us if we're going to try and reach out. Some of that may self-correct itself. Some of them are confirmation families, so we'll see them more. But just so you know, we're not ignoring that one, but that one's a little frustrating for us as a council because we have been trying. Next one on the list, find a use for our extra space. Are there community groups that need storage or meeting space? As I mentioned before, we have I think it was during the pandemic that we were approached about the AA group, wasn't it? Or was that pre?
I think it was just before.
Just, yeah.
Okay.
And that was looking like it was gonna happen, and then the world changed.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So we're trying to re-engage and reach out to some of the groups that had approached us, and then it kind of all fell apart with the pandemic. One of them was an AA group. Josh had brought up the point that there doesn't seem to be an AA group for any third shifters. So we're not sure if that's a need, but we're going to reach out to see if possibly that would be something that people coming off a third shift, if that would be something helpful for them. Again, when we were talking about, this goes back to the keyless entry, we should have one of those like CSI maps with the strings tied to everything, but that would be really good. So let's say somebody's coming in at 6 o'clock in the morning for an AA meeting. I can tell you right now, I will not be here opening the doors. And so it would be nice to be able to, have some of that keyless access so they could get in and have their meeting space and have access if they need to whatever facilities we've got over there. So that is something we're looking at. We've looked at bringing back the blood drive. The blood drive, for those of you who've been around a long time may remember, we used to do here in the congregation or inside the church building. And they basically quit coming. We were still planning on it, I guess, but they decided either we didn't have enough blood here at the church or something, or weren't enough people donating. So that fell apart some years back. So we're looking at possibly having one of the mobile trucks or one of the buses come through, maybe if we could do something like that. So we're reaching out to some groups there. So if anybody has any ideas of some of those sort of groups, we would definitely want to hear it, because we want to share our space, and we want to be able to use it for good things. I mean, we've got the space, and that's kind of what we're all about. So I know Flo had mentioned to us one of her author friends that goes through the same publisher is going to be in town, and we're looking at just having the author friend come and do a talk about her book kind of thing. So, April 2nd. So that is coming up. And we'll have that communicated out to everybody as well. But just even things like that, while we definitely, I feel like especially the ELCA as a whole is very service oriented, it can be just fun stuff like, hey, what about this? Like, if there's anything you can think of, we'd love to use the space. Food pantry, we had requests to increase the volunteers and the hours. Let's see, who's here from the pantry?
Well, I'm here from the pantry.
Okay.
I haven't heard it, but I want to know what the volunteer part is that they need, because I'm getting emails about it, but I don't know exactly what they need.
Good point. And that was kind of what we were thinking too. And there's a question about the hours. So currently we have set hours. Our distribution and our number of families has dropped dramatically. We kind of are assuming that may be related to the extra assistance that's still in place right now, but that's getting ready to expire. So I would not be surprised to see a big influx of families in the near future. But that is a good point, because I think we need to be better. Just because I don't really know either kind of what we need for volunteers. I know that I do know that since my dad has not been able to do some of his pickups, I know. Are you doing it now? Okay. So I didn't know if somebody had locked into those roles officially, or if you guys were kind of sharing it now. I know Warren had mentioned that he had done some stuff. I know Larry had done some pickups and stuff too.
Yeah, and I do some, and Nancy does some.
Okay. Oh, okay.
It's also talking about because with Shelley retiring, right now pickup is only when she is here and she does that. conversation to have. So it's a matter of just sitting down and having that conversation.
Because the other thing is registering these people to come in.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep, it's modifying, change is a pain, but change is good. So this will be a good change for us as a church and also for the food pantry, so, yep.
Next on the list was a better focus on the senior members, not specifically to seniors who are shut-ins, but just seniors as a whole. So I think that was kind of looking at maybe expanding senior ministry, which may or may not go under the focus on group activities. Next on the list was continue and expand the youth instruction, focus on doing good in the community. That again, more outreach, that's good.
That's where you would include the seniors, and say, well, this is the seniors.
And that's a good point, because that was, and that I think when we get to digging in deeper, that I don't know if the focus on seniors is there's some senior members in the congregation who maybe feel like there isn't enough for them. I don't know if it's I want to come to more Bible studies or more classes, or it's like I'm retired, what do you got for me to do? If it's that sort of thing, and it very well could be some of both. But that's a good point, because I didn't think of that. I originally was interpreting it as more like, do you want some senior specific Bible studies, or maybe topics like getting involved with like estate planning or things like that for older members. So
That too, but you were talking about the youth needing something,
yep.
and, there's always raking, there's gardening, there's all this stuff that they could help the seniors with.
And that is, so when, I forget if it was Rob or Josh who brought that up about the service day. And what we were laughing about the catchy name is, the first thing I thought of was a kamikaze cleanup, because when my brother was still alive with his girls, he used to see, they would do 2 hours and say, how many parks can we go to, and go on every piece of equipment. And they would like drive from park to park to park around Ashwaubenon. And so I'm like, I pictured it kind of as like this almost like, boom, this team of people shows up. And we were talking about involving the scouts as well, since they're a part of the congregation, and having the scouts and our youth go in and just do this massive whatever, weeding, tree trimming, bushes, blah, 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 and you're boom. And then you're gone in an hour, and then move on to the next house, stuff like that.
Except that with seniors, there's things like that need to be done all the time. One day is, that's what I was thinking.
Okay, gotcha. And that's a good point too. Oh, sorry.
Is publicity on your list?
Not specifically. I think that is part of it, because we've talked about that too, and that's going to be a part. But it depends on. I guess it kind of depends on how it plays out, as far as, are we. Like, so if we do become an RIC church, that's definitely something that is huge and people want to know about in the community. So definitely publicity there. Also, if we've got, hey Steve, you want to stand up here? All right. All right.
I guess where I was going, like, if we're bringing in this author, I don't know if there's cost. Prepaid paper, forget. But there's the Press Times, which I know a lot
Okay.
of our friends have gone to, which is once a week. And they look at, announcements and different things, getting it to the community centers, and the publishing group will also help. Like, I think Ashwaubenon has the paper itself. That's the one. Yeah, just to let, just let them know if it's online or if it's the physical paper. But, even like to advertise our church,
Well, that's good, because I think we were almost looking, or at least in my mind, I was thinking publicity would come when we had a better idea of where our direction was going. But that's kind of, again, simple stuff that we can do to let people know what's going on right now, which really isn't a change or a change in direction either, so.
Even just to change the wording, on our Facebook or our website or whatever, to say, hey, are you looking, hey, do you got skills, can you sew? You wanna come help us out? This is what we do with the stuff, you gotta let them know what the purpose is on the other end, but, hey, if you wanna come for some, activity and some coffee, come on over this day at this time. It's great if, somehow you gotta get that hook, and some of it's really easy, some of it's more of a challenge, but, to make your presence known. When our Facebook got shut down, that killed us, because people haven't re-liked us, even though, so I guess I put that back onto us as members that are on Facebook to share our page, because we don't have that many people that like our new page. It's not what it was by any means.
Yeah,
I didn't
it was a
know,
dramatic
I was
change.
following us, I didn't, and maybe I'm not been on Facebook because of. Sure. Yeah, I mean, I didn't even know that we got shut down and it changed, and I need to re-like. I didn't even know that. Oh, okay. And I might have just not have been listening or doing the right thing at the right time.
Yeah.
So, a lot of us in here are on the marketing committee, and so if there are people who are interested in doing that kind of stuff that we work on at the marketing committee, and we know about stuff, we work really hard to be able to do those things and make a plan and put that all in place. So, if
Good.
people are interested in joining us, we'd love more people.
Yes. Good. Comment about continue and expand the youth instruction. Again, focus on doing good in the community. And the last one on the list, which kind of ties into the little bit of discussion we just had, was have members take more responsibility by identifying their talents so that they can, either we as a council or some of the leaders in the church or just the church as a whole, can help them connect to activities. So kind of like what you were saying with marketing, if you have somebody who's a whiz with websites, maybe marketing's a good spot for you, or, yeah.
So, I'm on the city council, and something I've been asked to do for the city council is make a survey that identifies which group you would be the best fit for, or something like that. So I would be willing to do something like that for us as well. But you identify your strengths, and then it says, well, based on your strengths, these groups would be good for you, or something.
Oh, okay. Well, and we were kind of thinking back to the old days of the time and talent sheets that we used to fill out. You remember back in when we would do stewardship appeals and try and, that would be, we'd go through them and then decide who we can try and get on different committees, or if somebody's really interested in something, if there's a ministry or a group that meets that does that. But yeah, that's good. So those are all the things on the what dreams do you have for the direction of our ministry and our mission. So any other questions or anything pop into your head that you wanted to say that you missed? Watch your head there, buddy. What? You want to say something? Or what? Okay.
Why don't you come tell me, Steve? Oh. You come tell me?
And one other comment I think that's really interesting is that, so yesterday was our Crossways annual meeting. We're a nonprofit, so just like here at the church, we're required to have one once a year. Rob and Francie were the representatives of St. John, which was good to see you guys there. And we actually had a super good turnout. We had almost 80 people this year show up for the meeting, which is huge for us because we're lucky if we can get 45. And it was immediately following the annual meeting, there was a board meeting. So the staff members that are not part of the board, we still were there cleaning up. And a woman who's a youth director at Good Shepherd in Madison, which most people aren't familiar with it since we live up here, but it is a huge church. They have 2 campuses, one in Verona, one in Madison. And Becca has a big tie to camp. They're always bringing their kids to camp, and they do a lot of young adult ministry at camp and things. And I think it's great that they're driving from Madison up to our camps. But Becca and I had a chance to talk because her husband is on the board now. He just got elected. So we were talking, and she was, I was asking her some questions because they are an RIC designated church. So I was asking, how that went for them and, what were the pain points with the congregation and just all the kind of stuff you want to know. And it was really interesting because I said something about us celebrating our 150th anniversary. And she was like, what? And I said, yeah, 150 years. And she's like, she goes, so how have you guys stayed around so long? And I'm like, what do you mean? And I gave her this none of the charter members are still with us. Like I've got nobody to ask. I'm thinking, we could ask John. He's the longest member at this point in one tenure. But it was kind of interesting because her comment was, she's like, wow, you guys must have had a lot of reform over the years. And I said, what? And she's like, think about it. She's like, we look at, when the church was chartered, 1873. Can you imagine? It made me stop and think we didn't really have electricity. We didn't have cars. People were still taking their buggies to church. And, how many buildings ago was that? And the tornadoes or fires or whatever we've had over the years in our history that have caused, were things that it will be difficult for the church to come back from. But also just the changes, let alone in the different synodical mergers over the years, and just the idea of the way faith, how you still stay with the original ideas of what brought you together in the first place, but now you look at how do we apply that? How do we keep reapplying it and what makes sense? And she was so impressed that she's I think she's in her late 20s, early 30s. But she said, she's like, I just have never known anybody who went to a church that old. And I thought it was just really a funny comment. But the conversation was really good though about when she said, how much reform have you guys had to do over the years? And I think, okay, and then we started talking about the survey and what we were doing and just her general, she's like, she goes, and that is why you guys are still around. Yes.
Which is a great segue because obviously we're going to be celebrating this. So there's going to be some Zoom meetings, Zoom sessions, to sort of brainstorm a little bit, just to start the conversation going because this could be as big or small as we want it to be. So watch out in your emails for Zoom links. We'll probably have a session in person as well, but Sundays are becoming pretty busy with events, which is a great thing. So it may not be a Sunday, but just keep an eye out for information. Think of ideas, weird ways we can celebrate, that type of thing. You're not going to be here. I'm telling you right now. The dinner we're having is not going to be here. We are all going to celebrate, and someone's going to wait on us. We're not going to be serving from a kitchen or potluck or whatever. So that for sure is the only thing that we know we're doing. When, we don't quite know yet, but it can be, like I said, big or small. So watch your emails, bulletin, whatever, for information about brainstorming about that.
Good Shepherd just celebrated their 50th, and at their dinner, charter members got in for free, and I think we should do the same. I'll even take care of the Olsons. How's that?
That's good. So that is pretty much it. So what we wanted to do from a council perspective is make sure that we want to let the congregation know kind of what your responses were, and hopefully, generate some thought around how this is going to go. At this point, like we said, we really don't have decisions made. We are going to start looking kind of at the discernment process to become an RIC church, just to see what that exactly means, because it probably is we want some more background, because that's one that it sounds good, I guess, but we want to know exactly what it is, and
May 6th is an event that's online that we are gonna do. I mean, because that's like a learning.
Is that the Thursday one or the Saturday?
No, that's the Saturday one. That's the one about church. Well, there's one on Thursday.
Yeah.
Watch for information, because there's.
I wasn't gonna blast him with that right now, because I thought
I
we're,
think it's good to share that.
Yeah.
There's stuff out there. So May 4th, there's an individual session you take, so it's for you personally, and the 6th is for the congregation. And it goes through it's instructional, it gives you, and Reconciling Works is the company. Look it up. They do a great job of sharing what to expect, what you should get out of it, what the steps are, so it's going to be a fun, interesting journey.
I think and kind of what we were thinking too is if we kind of look at what Men on His Mission did regarding racial equity, how there was a lot of learning involved. And I mean, after talking to a lot of the guys in the group, you hear how there's so much of, I did not know that. I did not even think of that. It's education to make you stop and think. And so that's what we're hoping some of the RIC stuff does, that we get a little bit of education and it makes us think a little bit so we can decide how we go forward. So any other questions? Anything?
Thank you for being
Good.
here.
Yeah, thanks for sticking around. I know it's not the best weather, but I've been watching it snow, and it still is, I think, a little bit warm enough. It doesn't look like we've got too much on the parking lot, but no, I don't even think it's. So, all right, well, thank you very much. I appreciate you sticking around. Thanks.